Hi y'all, welcome to the 16th Annual Chicago Food Justice Summit. I'm Michelle and I am one of the summit leaders for one of the working groups, the Flavor and Reimagination Working Group, here working on planning for the summit for you guys this year. And it's exciting to say because we have done a lot of planning and a lot of work to come to this moment, and I'm here to bring you a little bit of flavor and reimagination to your day today during the summit, to tell you a little bit about something that I've been working on these last couple of months during quarantine. And I couldn't really think of anything more flavor and reimaginative than compost. And it's been one of my dreams to have an outdoor compost, to flip your compost in the middle of the winter, to have a little container out in the backyard where you can put your scraps in. But the realization of the fact that we live in Chicago and there is no room in my backyard, and I already have a garden, and we have this cooking area too that has filled up half of the backyard, and it's been a challenge trying to figure out where would compost actually fit. And even with composting in the house, there's things like vermicompost with worms or with specific bacteria, but it is a lot of work and research to look into. And then in the middle of quarantine, one of the journalists from the New York Times had written an article about a living room compost that doesn't smell. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about my story behind my flavor and reimagination of the compost and waste, food waste that we have, and how I've been dealing with trying to figure out what is the best way to compost some of these things rather than throw them in the trash. Because as a dietitian, it's pretty sad, just peeling all these apples or chopping up all these greens, and you see the bad parts and then you just toss them in the trash, and then you just have more trash that's going to the bigger landfills. And so I wanted to see if this was a cool and efficient and super easy way to compost, and found out doing it a couple of months. For now, it's pretty easy, and I'm excited to tell you guys about it and how to do it. So stay tuned. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I got started. So I encountered this article on the New York Times that was shared to me by my friend in Cleveland. This journalist, Hiroko wrote an article on how when quarantine started in the spring, oh my gosh, we're a year into it now, she lived in New York and they completely stopped collecting compost. And she came across this problem where it's well, I have all this food waste. What am I going to do with all this food waste that I have? And they're no longer collecting compost because it isn't safe because of coronavirus. And so she wrote this article remembering a time when she was in Japan and everyone had these living room composts that they had. And so she decided to take it on herself. And even though in America we don't have the same type of ingredients, she selected a couple of ingredients that might be similar to the ones that they use in Japan. And so I am here to tell you a little bit about some of the processes that I went to, how I did it myself kind of thing, what you need. And I will do a little demo because the compost that we have in our house right now, we're a family of 4, is really, really full. And her compost that she takes pictures about and has instructions to do in the article is only just for her and her partner. And so having the double of the family members in the home that's eating and stuff, we have a lot more food waste. And so I wanted to make a second living room compost. And so I'm here and I'm gonna take you along for that journey while I create my second box. And we are going to include the links to her article, and then she also has a little illustration that she provides on a step-by-step kind of tutorial of some of the ingredients she used. She also has a Google Doc, which will also include the link, that goes a little bit into more specifics about what materials you can use and what you can compost, what you can't compost. And then she also includes the city of Nyoga in Japan, their instructions on how they do composting in Japan. So the city, actually it's a citywide initiative, and hopefully in Chicago, maybe we can do something like that at some point. But my hope and dream for this video is for us to hopefully maybe share tips and tricks and gather more individuals in Chicago to do this living room compost with me, and we could share stories and, you know, success stories, failure stories, what we learned, what we have learned compost well, what we learned compost not so well, the smells, and maybe some of the issues that we come across with living room compost. So without further ado, let's get started. I will show you some of the materials that we'll need. All right, friends, grab your pens or pencils and grab some paper, but I'll also have a recipe for you just in case, and all the list of things that you need to start your living room no smell compost. Woohoo! Your very first item on the list is a cardboard box. I actually have two here. This Apple box and then this smaller Amazon box. And what I'm gonna do actually is like lob off some of these flaps to use as reinforcement for the bottom of my box, because you kind of need a lot of reinforcement just in case it leaks or you put too much liquidy items in there. And the other thing that I wanted to mention too, I don't know if you knew that there were certain names for cardboard, but what you want is specifically named corrugated cardboard, and that's the type of cardboard that has these wavy things underneath. Here's a close-up. I don't know if you can see it, but focus. Anyways, it should have multiple kind of wavy layers, and if you don't have enough cardboard, you can just lob off some from like different types of cardboard and kind of layer them on the very bottom. What really works super well that I found that also have lids for their boxes are copy paper boxes. So if you can find something like a copy paper box that you purchase like bulk copy paper in, or maybe you can go to like Office Max or Staples or something like that and ask them, hey, can I like take one of the cardboard copy boxes that you guys have with lids on them, rather than them tossing into recycling, you can use it for your compost box. And this is because we will eventually have to cover the compost box just in case like little animals don't make babies in them, and then you have a fruit fly problem, because that's not ideal either in the home. And so it's really convenient to have a paper copy paper box because it already has a lid that fits on top. And my first compost box that I did actually has a lid like that and is a copy paper box, so I will show you that a little bit later and tell you what I mean by that. But all in all, if you don't have one, fret not. I have a solution for you that also can use just items from your home to makeshift a little lid for your little box. All right, so I am going to cut the camera and lob off some of this cardboard first, and then I will show you guys what my finished product of my cardboard box is. That I'm actually waiting for, that I do not have right now, that you really need as part of your ingredients, is biochar. And this is the one I'm ordering off of Amazon, and unfortunately I've called many of the nurseries and plant shops in Chicago to ask if any of them have this. while my heat turns on. And sadly, none of them carry it. It's a soil amendment that you can find on Amazon, and you can either order from Home Depot or Lowe's specifically, but unfortunately I haven't been able to find it locally in some of the nursery and landscaping companies that we know here well in Chicago. So I am ordering off Amazon. One of your first order of businesses will be to bloom your coco peat bricks. So usually when you order them off Amazon or something like that, they look a little bit like this, where it's at a brick and you basically have to introduce it to some water for it to bloom and magically unravel itself. Sometimes if you purchase them at like your local nursery store or something like that, or garden store, they would already have it pre-bloomed for you. But just to give you a little bit of an example, your ratio that you want is 15 liters of cocoa husk to 10 liters of biochar or hardwood ash. And unfortunately, I didn't, my hardwood ash is not going to come until Friday, and I don't want to use some random material, so I'm waiting for that to come, and I will just include that in the video, but I won't necessarily put it into my mixtures until that comes in. But I will introduce some of my old compost into the new one. So it basically, biochar looks like your typical charcoal, but it's specifically, I don't know what the mechanisms are, what makes a difference from like activated charcoal, but I didn't want to take the risk of using some random thing, so I'm waiting for it to come. And I had a little bit of a package that I had opened from my previous compost, and so this is like about 3/4 of a brick, and I had bloomed some parts of it, that's why it looks so weird. But basically just take it out of the package, and I had filled this bin with some warm water. And essentially what you do is you just put it in the water and it will magically kind of like start to bloom. And I'll show you too. It's like one of those towels that you find where you could get at the novelty store or something like that, where it's like compacted so little. And then once you put it in water, it like expands to a beautiful hand towel. And so this is essentially what it does, is that it's pressed so tightly where it needs to be in water for it to absorb it and to break apart. So I have, I just put a little bit of water, and you don't want to add too much water or else it'll be wet and soppy, and you don't really want that. I made that mistake that first time around when I made my first batch of compost. And so, and you'll just let it gently sit, and once you see it, once it absorbs enough water, it's going to start breaking apart like this. The ratio that you want is kind of like in 3. So you kind of want 2/3 of your compost to be coco peat, and then 1/3 to be biochar. And like I mentioned, I don't have biochar at the moment because it comes on Friday, and I won't have it in time, clearly, because I'm doing the video now. And so I will start off with the coco peat, and then I'm going to add the biochar when I get it. And so for example, the article says you will want like 15 liters of coco peat, and I'm kind of just using the numbers. I wasn't sure if it was already kind of bloomed or if it was kind of like from the brick portion, but I'm gonna do it based off of the brick size because that's what the size that I have, and I don't really want to measure it. And then you would want 1 part biochar when I get it, or hardwood ash. And so math breakdown, which I'm terrible at, is that, say for example, we do it in quarts or like gallons or whatnot, and there are 4 quarts in a gallon. So let's start off with easy numbers. So let's say that you have, these came in like gallons or something like that, and so you know that 4 quarts are in a gallon. So let's think about like 3 quarts to make the numbers easier, because you need 2 parts of the coco peat and then 1/3 of the biochar or hardwood ash. And so let's say for example you just start off with 3 quarts, and so 2 of those quarts would be this coco peat. So if this was a gallon, you would want half of the amount of the coco peat, and then you would want 1 quart of the biochar. And so that would be equal to 3. And so if you're not sure or whatnot, you might have to do some math equations or algebra, solve for X kind of thing. Do some maths to be able to calculate the correct number. But yeah, this is pretty cool where if you'll just slowly add water to it so that it expands and blooms all the way. Ta-da! And then we're gonna assemble once I get this all bloomed and stuff. Get ready, get excited, we're gonna assemble under! Alright, my friends, it is time for assembly! Let's assemble our DIY living room compost box. So, I am doing it in my laundry room, but you can do it in your living room or whatnot. I like my laundry room because it actually, we have a vent right above this table, which makes it a little bit warm and helps things decompose a little bit faster. So I'm going to start off with my crate. So this helps provide ventilation, and the reason why the cardboard box is nice is because it's paper and not plastic, and so it lets kind of air flow through it so things can dry up with time so it doesn't get soggy or anything like that. So good ventilation, and you want something with holes in it. Like I said, you could use a milk gallon, or you can set it on 2 things of wood just so that it's slightly elevated off of the ground. So this is my little crate I'm putting my box under. Then the next step would be your boxes. I am doing the extra heavy duty version where I'm putting a box in a box, my box in a box, and I had cut off some of the arms, that it did have, and what I'm gonna do is reinforce the box with the arms that I cut out and some extra cardboard. And what I didn't do actually, and I should be doing, is I'm going to tape off these side handles here, these holes, so that no little gnats come trailing by when I have my compost. And you just want to cover up any holes that your boxes might have, just in case, and to seal it off properly. So now that we have our boxes layered and everything, our next step is our coco peat. Woohoo! And I am guessing this is maybe around like a pound of coco peat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pour it in. So if I had a pound, then when my biochar comes in, I'm thinking I'm gonna use half of a pound. So a pound would be like 2/3, and then half of a pound would be 1/3. So I'm gonna use my scoopula and just kind of like disperse the coco peat down here. And then at this point, if I had my biochar, I would be putting my biochar in there. So for video purposes, this is biochar on my phone, the package that I will be receiving on Friday. And I'm gonna pour it in here, my half a pound of biochar that I weigh out. I'll use my kitchen scale or whatever to weigh it. So put the biochar in here, boop, 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 boop. And then after that, you are ready for your scraps, the fun part, scraps. What kind of scraps do I have here? I like to cut up some of my scraps too to littler pieces, littler. So like orange peels or like cutie peels, I actually cut them up to thinner pieces because then they will deteriorate a little bit faster. Even like my banana peels. Some other things are, like I mentioned, coffee grounds. I have like this melon skin too. And once you add your biochar and your coco peat and give it a little nice little mix, you can then start to add a little bit of your food waste. And so when Hiroshi, she says she typically puts in like 1.5 pounds from her partner every day, and she puts like coffee grounds and tea leaves, used tea leaves, and then you can just sprinkle this in there, and then once in a while you can like mix it. I love it because it's like your little pet that eats up all of your food waste, and it is pretty magical seeing it after a couple of days how some of the items that you end up putting in actually slowly disappears. So I'm going to add a little bit of my food waste to my compost box here right now just for kind of like showing purposes. So you'll see that like these orange peels and whatnot we have in there, and then in a couple days they will be all gone. But once you kind of like settle your food waste in there, what I like to do is then I grab a cloth, or you can use like sew up a t-shirt or something like that, all the holes in the t-shirt, and then you can kind of like just wrap it over. But this is just to ensure that you have a little lid on your compost box so it doesn't attract any little friends. So I'm going to add this here, and I'm going to tape up those little arm holes too, just so that later on we don't get little gnats come and hang out. And like I said, most of like the copy paper boxes, those boxes come with lids, so if you can get one of those, that would be awesome. But I am just going to tie this, and then you leave it alone if you don't have any more food. And every time I like put food in it, I try to like mix it every day, and you can just kind of see like how everything progresses to deteriorate, and it's pretty cool and it's pretty magical in my opinion to see all that happen. And you can kind of just get whatever you have in the household to tie it or wrap it, just so that it's sealed off so that no little critters can enter in. And then you kind of leave it alone for a little bit and let it do its magic. And if you find that things aren't like deteriorating as quickly enough, you can put it in the sun so that the heat kind of helps it go along. And like I said, I have it under a vent, so it's right above here. You can't really see it, but it kind of like introduces heat to it. And I think in the summer it'll be okay, but in the winter it's nice to have that heat there just to keep it going and to keep the microbes working, give it some energy. And so this is it here, and this would be your compost box. And every once in a while I just come and mix it, and you might figure out that it's like a little bit wet, and then you can start to put like dry stuff in it as well. And I am gonna have a couple videos after this to show you kind of like what are some do's and what are some don'ts, and what are some great compost materials that you can put into your living room compost. Yay! And that's about it, folks. It's as easy as that. Your do-it-yourself living room compost that doesn't smell. And hopefully we can start a conversation either through chat, through Hoover, or through YouTube comments, or if you would tag us if you start your living room compost at Shy Food Policy on Instagram or even on Twitter, wherever you follow us at, and take a picture of your food compost. We would love to continue having this conversation. I would love to share tips if you guys find something works really well, and if I discover anything new, I would love to have more conversations and chats and talks about that. And one last tip I wanted to mention too, I know things can get a little tricky with having food kind of like in your kitchen that's sitting there, if you're like doing too many kind of like grocery, whole food kind of things, and you're like chopping up a bajillion things. One tip I like to give is to have like designated containers that say food for compost next to your sink or something like that, so you can kind of keep it sealed so it doesn't smell bad, especially in the summer when gnats start to come out. We have like these takeout containers too, where you could just mark off like, this is food for compost, do not throw it out or whatnot, for other roommates or family members or whatever, whoever you're living with. And one thing to be sure of too is to take off fruit stickers, and yeah, like just to if you like kind of cut too much food, one of the tips that one of my friends had given me when she was doing it is to stick it in the fridge or the freezer, and when you want your compost to slow down a little bit, you can kind of just let it sit for a little bit and then pull this out of the freezer when you're ready for it to kind of be filled again. And just to mention a couple things I've already thrown into my compost before, like I've thrown pomegranate like skins, I've thrown eggshells, I've thrown in like apple cores, anything rotten, like I've thrown in like bread that was stale and like had a little bit of mold on it. And if your compost grows a little bit of mold on it, that's okay too. Don't freak out, just mix it around really well and then you can kind of let it sit again. But those are all the tips that I have for you guys so far, and thank you so much for watching this video. It's exciting for me to share about this because this is something that I've been wanting to have conversations with people about, because it's been such a cool experience and I've only been doing it for a couple months. So I would love to hear if you guys decide to do no smell, no hassle living room compost. Please, please, please comment about it, take pictures about it, and post about it. And I hope you guys boast about it a little bit, because it is kind of cool to see magic happen when we kind of put our food waste that we have to good use and be able to regenerate and recycle in that way, and to continue to make sure that the food cycle that we are part of in the city of Chicago is sustainable and is efficient, and that we're making the most out of what we have as a city. And I know it's challenging, but we're a community that I hope continues to share our conversations and tips and tricks with each other on how to make Chicago a more food sovereign city. And I hope with greater initiatives to come, please stay tuned with the Chicago Food Policy Action Council as we continue to do work in our community to make Chicago more of a food sovereign city. And so thanks for joining in, and continue enjoying the summit, and look forward to having conversations and chats with you guys soon. Take care. Bye.